What's going on, my pretty pandas? It's your huggable hipster here, and welcome back to Psychologically Gaming, where we are going to be talking about Wesker from Resident Evil. Now, like I said in the previous episode when we were talking about Mr. X, I told y'all that we will be diving into this episode with Mr. Wesker. I was about to say Mr. X again, but I'm just gonna call him Mr. Wesker for now. Mr. Daddy, Mr. Wesker, Mr. Who's a What's It, it's gonna be Mr. Wesker. So Wesker is a very complex, very multifaceted character that we see developed throughout the game. And actually, it was the very first character to be developed in the Resident Evil series back in the 1980s. The very first story that was developed was Wesker's story. I felt like Mikami put more of his heart and soul into that when he was developing the entirety of the story of Resident Evil, because that was the first character that ever came about. Crazy, right? So when we think of Wesker, for those of you who haven't played the game or have only played the first game or have maybe played only the fifth game because that was one of the more popular ones. Those of you who only know one side of Wesker as the guy who worked at STARS, Special Tactics and Rescue Squad, just on one side of him where he was like, oh, let me get my comrades to safety inside the mansion. When you go into seeing Wesker in Resident Evil 5, you see an entirely different side of him, you see an entirely different persona that is Wesker. Oh god, every time I hear the word persona now, I think of BTS, damn it. But needless to say, Wesker is he's a complex character to say the least, and throughout the Resident Evil series, up until the fifth game, he is very diverse, and psychologically, he is very interesting. But we all know about every single evil character that has ever made an appearance ever in any horror game. I don't care if it's Resident Evil, I don't care if it's Outlast, Evil Within, whatever it is. He has a god complex. Say it with me. Every evil character in every horror game has a god complex. A god complex is basically, even though I've said it so many times, I will say it again for those of you who are not sure or do not know. A god complex is basically where the person who has the complex thinks that anybody else is below them, little to them, just the ant on their shoe, just the flick of the dirt on their wrist, just absolutely nothing. They really don't care about other people besides themselves. They're narcissistic, very manipulative, and somewhat sociopathic. Or they might have sociopathic tendencies. With Wesker, I do believe that he is actually a sociopath because he puts on so many different masks. So many different masks, it's unbelievable, of where he will act one way to his STARS members, and he will act one way to them that's very kind and empathetic, and just all that fun stuff. Like, he's just very, very good with how he uses his masks. Then when he puts his umbrella mask on, he has to act like the corporate hoo-ha. He has to act like the big guns who carries out all of the major decisions that happen within the company, and he's one of the main people that really ran all the testing in Umbrella. Where do you think the Tyrant came from? Where do you think a lot of the big experiments came from? Came from Wesker. It also came from Spencer as well, but we'll get into him in another Psychologically Gaming because Spencer is just... he's surprisingly one character that does not have a god complex. I don't think he's necessarily evil, but he does have certain issues that are, well, you know, kind of morbid. Create a mansion like that, you're bound to have some morbidity issues. Like, oh honey, you know, I'm gonna go take the dog for a walk. You know, I get sliced in half on the way downstairs because there's swinging slicers coming down. Oh honey, I'm gonna go get some breakfast, get some cereal, let me just jump over this barbed wire and do a puzzle and, you know, try to find a missing key or else I'm gonna die. It's not even logical. Not even logical, to say the least, to live in a mansion like that. Architecturally speaking, absolutely beautiful, but in no way, shape, or form is it even logical, to say the least, to live in. Oh my god, the heating and electricity on that place, oh my god, must cost a fortune. So might I add, I did not sleep at all last night, so the fact that I'm even getting out coherent sentences right now is astonishing. Also, Wesker has a little bit of bipolar disorder. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but he is a wee bit bipolar. In certain circumstances, he will be very empathetic. Well, that's part of the narcissism and sociopathic tendencies. Is bipolar / mania, and it is very clear within the fifth game whenever you have the boss battle with him. Very narcissistic, like I've said repeatedly. Takes shots every time she says he's narcissistic. And the other major thing that I noticed with Wesker being the complex character that he is, we might actually do 2 episodes on him, I'm not entirely sure, but this is an overview of who Wesker is. You see him as a control freak. He's very nitpicky, he's very anal about a lot of things. He actually pulled the trigger whenever, if you're playing as Jill, you can have either Chris or Barry there, but most likely Barry will be in the situation in the very first game of where you see the tyrant break loose and he, releases it, and then the tyrant ends up killing him, or so Jill thought. But with all of the drugs and all of the things that he took into his system, Wesker still is able to be alive. Again, playing into the god complex of him thinking that he's immortal because he created these viruses. Wasn't the only one to create the viruses, but he created a lot of these things in tandem with Birkin, and Birkin and him worked side by side a lot of the time on the T-virus, on the G-virus especially. There's a lot of things that plays into the character of Wesker. He's really interesting, and it's fascinating to see how he's played out, not just in the games, but in the movies as well. Also, another thing I want to say about Wesker is that the way that he kind of molds and bends himself, very malleable emotionally. He will literally make himself to fit in whatever situation that he is in. He's kind of like a gecko in a way, if you think about it. Not only can he fit himself in emotionally in these different circumstances, but he allows himself to kind of scope out how other people are feeling and fit accordingly to how they are feeling within the game. The writing on it, absolutely wonderful. So for this character development to take on a life of its own like this, outstanding. But that was my character analysis, probably a part one of my character analysis, because I feel like there's a lot more that we could dive into with Wesker. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit the bell down below, because I make videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. EST, even though this one is a little tad late because it took some time to edit it. Listen, post-production me, you're doing a good job, okay honey? Keep it up. Take casually nerd, you guys, and I will talk to you all in Friday's video. Peace.